This is writer and editor at Mundial magazine. Sam, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning. How's it going?
Am I right to say you're also a West Ham fan? Is that correct?
Yes, unfortunately I am.
Okay. I don't mean to rub salt in the wounds, but was that the highlight of West Ham fans' weekend? Marko Arnautovic saying, "Don't listen to anybody but me and the club."
It was a bit of a weird one because obviously the timing of it happened about 15 minutes after we had quite a bad loss that you may have read about or watched. And I mean, you just listen to it there. The air of the statement that he made was a bit almost like he was being held at gunpoint in front of a plain wall. Everything is fine. They're treating me well. But like, to be honest, you'd rather just a player just get out of the club if they don't want to be there, if they're not there for the right reasons. I mean, personally for him, I completely understand if he does want to go and take the money, but just go. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those. So I'd say it was a small victory for West Ham fans. It doesn't really make up for the larger, more crucial loss that happened about 15 minutes previous.
Was it also a victory for manager power and a lack of player power? Those who go against the idea that maybe Jose Mourinho was victim of a heave in the Manchester United dressing room, or that Antonio Conte was previously a victim of a heave in the Chelsea dressing room. And Manuel Pellegrini and Maurizio Sarri over the last week have been the two managers who've come down hard on players. Pellegrini actually acted with a fairly heavy hand with Marko Arnautovic here, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, you say it worked, but obviously you don't really understand them, or I don't, no one does, understands the machinations behind why these moves or why these deals actually happen, whether or not it's him or whether or not it's someone quickly getting on the blower, being Marko, we're in trouble. I don't know if you've got the telly on, but we're in a bit of a sticky situation, is whatever you were asking for. But I mean, it was refreshing that Pellegrini came out and I mean, although he didn't answer questions about Arnautovic straight after the game, presumably because he probably didn't know a whole lot about it. I mean, he would have still been pretty much in the dugout when the conversation was being finalised. But it was quite refreshing to see someone come out and sort of say, no one's bigger than this club. I mean, West Ham, I mean, by all rights, as much as I'd love to think of us as one of the top teams in the country, we aren't. We're sort of like a mid-table team. But it's quite refreshing that manager power and club power is, at least on the surface, still in effect.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened in the game itself, the specifics of how a team as talented and self-assured as West Ham are supposed to be at the moment can actually end up being whooped in the cup?
Yeah, I mean, loath as I am to agree with someone like Wally Downs, who probably represents quite an old school version of football that we'd like to say doesn't really count anymore. It was as simple as them wanting it more. Them all over the pitch to a man, challenging every tackle like it was a cup final in the way that we're all taught as kids and that we've all been taught as adults. It no longer exists anymore. I think probably the best way to think about the FA Cup for me, or the way that I rationalise it to myself, is like, say the Premier League is about the biggest TV show in the world. The FA Cup, every single game is its own little film. And if you're not fully committed for the entirety of that 90 minutes or plus 90 minutes, you're going to get beaten by a team who just simply wants it more. And it's quite refreshing, I suppose, in terms of like the actual cup itself. But on the day, it was just, I mean, the first 45 minutes was as bad as I've ever seen us play. Wimbledon were brilliant all over the pitch. We looked like the team that were bottom of League One, which is embarrassing. We didn't start with a particularly weak team, although players like Felipe Anderson were on the bench, who obviously is a fantastic player, and if things changed when he did come on. But we didn't have any cut through. Didn't look like we really cared. We didn't test their goalkeeper at all, which is surely the bare minimum, apart from a Chicharito chance that hit the post, I think, within the first few minutes. It was just better all over the pitch. The goals were going in straight in front of me. I was actually in the stands rather than in the press box when I was covering it. And I've got to say, I mean, I was hard pushed to not feel quite chuffed for the team and for fans who it clearly meant so much to, because it just looked like no one at West Ham cared.
You say you were happy for Wimbledon. Did it make you less happy when you looked at Wally Downs' quote saying that he was watching Match of the Day and we just couldn't stop laughing? We weren't analysing it. We were just laughing like silly.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen those quotes, so they're sprung on me now. But look, I mean, I don't blame him whatsoever. He'd have come into this. I mean, I was interviewing people at the club maybe half an hour before kickoff, and they were generally resigned to a loss. The best that they could hope for was to not be embarrassed on live TV. So I'm really not surprised that he is shocked or laughing about the fact that they beat a team on paper so much better than them comfortably. To score 4 goals against Premier League opposition when you're the bottom of League One is laughable. And I think that from West Ham perspective, you can't hold any grudges against Wally Downs, though I might try to.
Right. The other thing just on Wally Downs, just kind of reading a couple of interviews with him in the build-up to last Saturday, he says that Vinnie Jones was giving him a couple of tips on, how to manage a football team. Does it make it easier to take that Vinnie Jones had a part to play potentially in this Wimbledon result?
I mean, who am I to question the football credibilities of someone like Vinnie Jones? I mean, I loved him in X-Men Last Stand, Gone in 60 Seconds, both great films. I think that there's probably a reason why his managerial career didn't really work out. And I think Wally Downs probably says as much in the after. I think it's actually in a pre-match where he was just basically, someone asked him tactics of how to beat a Premier League team, and he was basically just picking out centre midfielders to go and rough up early doors. But to be fair to him, it worked. I mean, you can't hold any grudges against Wimbledon. They fully deserved it. I mean, Vinnie Jones, I mean, I'll be very happy to see the back of him. I mean, I'm sure he's on the plane back to LAX now. But you know what? Fair play to him. I mean, it's the first time that Vinnie Jones has actually been to see AFC play since 2002. So, I mean, he's had a lot of time to sort of get all of his ducks in a row and work out how to beat teams, because he's certainly not been going to matches.
But was the game referred to as the Hollywood Derby, Vinnie Jones versus Danny Dyer?
It wasn't in my circles, no. But you know what? I mean, I'm sure Danny Dyer's woke up to plenty of text messages from assorted Wimbledon-affiliated D-list celebs, and I can only say probably deserves it. I mean, even Danny Dyer couldn't hold a grudge against Wimbledon right now.
I did want to ask you about one thing that Arnautovic said about how much he enjoys playing at the London Stadium. So we're Premier League rights holders here. We send commentary teams to every game in the Premier League, and everybody comes back from the London Stadium going, this is not a good stadium to watch football in. I can only presume that's just a lie that Arnautovic is telling, that the players can't actually enjoy playing there, can they?
I mean, if I was being paid to go there every week rather than paying to go there every week, yeah, I'm sure I'd love going to the London Stadium as well. But it's one of those where it feels a little bit like you're stuck in a terminal at Heathrow and someone's just put a load of grass in the middle of it. Yeah, it's absolutely. It's just a very weird situation to watch football in. Mostly because it's not a football stadium. It's a lovely athletic stadium and events. I mean, people assure me that they're very good to watch there. But considering the majority of the events that I've seen there are West Ham playing not very well, maybe my view of it is quite tarnished. But I mean, you could go on about sightlines and you could go on about the ease of which you can get into the stadiums, which is something that the our chairman are quite happy to point out. But I mean, from an actual fan point of view, it's not very fun to watch. From a player point of view, I can't imagine it's very fun either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So a cup run for a team like West Ham, Pochettino's in the papers today saying cups are for egos, top four is all that matters. And I can see how if you're a West Ham fan, when you're stuck at the moment in this perpetual era of the team is maybe actually going through a bad patch, it might be relegation candidates, we're not going to get relegated because we're too good. Team goes through a good run of form, it's like, oh, maybe we might be able to make a run for Europe, and then it never makes that run for Europe because the squad just isn't good enough. You're kind of stuck in this no man's land. A cup run would have been a nice distraction, surely.
It certainly would have been a nice thing to have. I mean, we've only really had one in my recent memory when we lost in the final against Liverpool, which I won't talk about. Obviously, a very painful memory. But it's one of those. I mean, when we aren't really competing for anything. I mean, Tottenham have other things to play for. They're playing for Champions League football. They're paying for a huge financial reward. So you can understand that, especially with them paying off a stadium. We've got a stadium that we've got for dirt cheap, and we're in the league, as you say, where we're probably not going to go down, touching wood. We're certainly not going to challenge for Europe anytime soon. So it would have been nice for the team to actually look like they had a little bit of ambition this year. But to be honest, I don't really put that down to Pellegrini. I think that's maybe something that's just been inculcated into the squads over a number of years. I mean, it certainly has in my recent memory. West Ham have always been one of those teams where there'd be sort of a bet ruiner. So you could never tell which West Ham team are going to turn up. We could beat, as we have done, beat Arsenal 2-0 or we'll lose to Burnley 2-0. I mean, it's one of those where you kind of are resigned to the fact that you're not really going to win anything. And it would have been nice to challenge a little bit. I'd have loved a little quarter-final, maybe a semis, a little trip out to Wembley. But unfortunately, another year goes by and another chance goes begging.
Yeah, no, for sure. What did you make of what Pochettino was saying then? So you don't have any problems with it if you're talking about the financial opportunity that Spurs have for finishing the top four?
It's a tough one because they've got a team that should be challenging for silverware, whether that's cups or maybe just short on the league. They're probably a few signings away from that. I think that I can understand why fans would be annoyed because it does smack of sort of pessimism, sort of like a bit of just settling for where they are. Or maybe it could be sort of excuses made. I know a lot of people have been digging them out about Spursism and bottling. But to be honest, I think that they're in a very tough situation financially. And you don't want to talk about it in those sort of terms, but they haven't got the money to invest in a team that will take them to fight on all fronts. And so to be fair to Pochettino, I mean, like, you'd be hard pushed to find anyone who doesn't think he's one of the best managers in the league. He's doing what he can, I think. So, I can't fault him too much. I think that he could probably have couched it in better ways. I think that could possibly come down to something being lost in translation. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you've got no money and your squad needs improving, what are you supposed to do?
Do you think from a Mauricio Pochettino perspective that the frustration may actually spill into a level where it actually dictates what he might do with his own career? Because it seemed to me that, say, a month ago when Jose Mourinho got sacked, Mauricio Pochettino was obviously the front runner for the job, and he was in such a great position where he had a bit of leverage, where Manchester United desperately wanted him and were probably going to pay big money to get him, because Solskjaer wasn't supposed to work out. But Solskjaer is working out so beautifully at the moment that maybe they'll actually look at Mauricio Pochettino's situation and Daniel Levy's staunchness at the head of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club as an inconvenience and say to themselves, well, we can't be bothered with the hassle of Mauricio Pochettino, which in his position, if he's a man of ambition and wants to manage Manchester United, is not ideal.
No, it's not. But you know what? I think if you look at people in football, you look at people who know football, be that journalists up to the people who run these clubs, I think that everyone understands that Pochettino is a fantastic manager, regardless of form, regardless of the bad luck that they're having, or Tottenham are having off the pitch, which is unfortunately impacted on the pitch. But I think he's one of those where you can see the frustration building in him, and I mean, he's only human. As much as these people do get paid, it's always important to remember that they are human and they do get stressed out, and he probably had plenty of sleepless nights over the fact that he has an extremely high-profile job where his hands seem quite tied. It wouldn't surprise me if in the next season or two, if they don't win any cups and if he isn't given money to improve the team, that he would move on. And I think that, I don't want to say that Man United should get rid of Solskjaer by any stretch of the imagination, because I think that to come into a team that was such a poisoned well as what Mourinho left it, and to do well and to win this string of games and to win now against some good teams, Arsenal as well on Friday, I think that you can't say that it's just luck. But, I mean, obviously Pochettino would, you'd imagine, be an improvement. But I think even for him, I think he could probably do with a little bit less stress right now. And there's probably not a more stressful job in world football than the Man United's job at the moment. So I think that, I mean, if your only stresses are to have quite a good team, probably the third best team in the league, I'd say, and to be there or thereabouts every single season, that's probably less stressful than being in the Man United hot seat. So I think if I was Pochettino, I'd put my feet up a bit.
Yeah, quick question about Declan Rice. There'd been enough chatter at the end of December to make it look like there was a possibility somebody would come in with an offer this January and maybe tempt the owners to cash in immediately. But presumably they've got no intention of cashing in on Declan Rice until he's worth 200 million.
I mean, I mean, I'd love it if he was worth 200 million, and I'd be chuffed for Declan as well. But I mean, if you look at our team, the fact that, I mean, I'd probably say Felipe Anderson is our best player, and to have a 19-year-old in Declan Rice, who's as good as he is and as comfortable as he is, to be our second best player, one of our most effective players, certainly, and he's certainly been so consistent as well. I mean, like, I think it was so important that they managed to lock him up into a longer-term deal. Obviously, that doesn't really mean anything in today's football, but he's just fantastic. Like, it's a joy to watch him play, and you so rarely get to say that about defensive midfielders. And I know he sort of sees himself as a centre-half. I think that people are coming to terms with the fact that he's probably one of the best young defensive midfielders in Europe right now, and I make no bones about saying that. And I think that he could very easily walk into a better team. And I told him no grudges if he decided that he wanted to do that and he wanted to progress his career in that sort of way. Internationally, I don't really know what he's going to do, obviously. But I just hope for continued success for someone who is going about football in the right way, who has never let the contract disputes really get in the way of his football, apart from the fact of just going out there and performing better and better each week, which is obviously the best impetus to get more money, if that's what you want. I mean, he's been fantastic, just a genuine breath of fresh air in that team. And I think if he was playing against Wimbledon, I genuinely don't think that would have happened on Saturday night. And I think Pedro Obiang is going to get a lot of stick, especially for being at fault for one of the goals. But I think it comes down to the fact that the leadership and consistency and quality of Declan Rice just cannot be understated anymore. And he's one of those players we just need to build a team around.
Yeah, speaking of which, do the West Ham fans who also support England care about whether or not he chooses Ireland or England at this point?
I mean, it's one of those. I mean, as someone from England, obviously I'd love to see great young players playing for us, and I think that we've got a team now that is set up to support those young players where for, a few decades we didn't. But, I mean, it's up to him. And I think again, no one would hold anything against him for playing for Ireland or England. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that will kick off about everything in this game, in this world. I think as long as he's happy, I'm happy. I think international football has always come second to me to club football. So whatever's all right by Declan is all right by me.
Sam, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Very much for having me.
It's Sam Diss there, writer and editor at Mundial magazine. You can get him on Twitter as well.